Simplifying the fraction means dividing both the numerator and denominator by a common factor or a common divisor. For simplified fractions, the numerator and denominator remain whole numbers. For example, 2/4 can be simplified to 1/2 by dividing 2 into both the numerator and the denominator. 3/6 can be simplified by dividing 3 into both the numerator and denominator. The fraction 1/2 results. 5/6 cannot be simplified because 5 cannot be divided into 6 with a whole number resulting. 5 divided into the denominator 6 equals 1 1/5. However, 5 can be divided into 5 or the numerator with the whole number 1 resulting. Equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value. For example, the rectangle is separated into 8 equal pieces. One fractional unit is 1/8. Two fractional units are 2/8. 2/8 could also be represented as 1/4 because dividing the numerator and denominator by 2 equals 1/4. We can conclude that 2/8 is equivalent to 1/4 because the value of both fractions is equal. Equivalency can also be shown graphically. Since the rectangle is divided into 8 equal parts, 1/8 is one fractional unit and 2/8 are two fractional units. The rectangle is divided into 8 equal pieces along the bottom scale. Along the top scale, the rectangle is divided into 4 equal pieces. Graphically, we can see that both are equivalent. Fractions can be raised. This occurs when both the numerator and the denominator of a fraction are multiplied by the same number. For example, 1/4 can be raised to 4/16 by multiplying the numerator and denominator by 4. 1/4 can be raised to 2/8 by multiplying the 1 by 2 and by multiplying the 4 by 2. Fractions which are raised are called equivalent fractions. 1/4, 4/16, and 2/8 are equivalent. Suppose 1/2 needs to be raised 100 times. Multiply both the numerator and denominator by 100. The fraction 1/2 becomes 100/200ths. When the numerator and denominator of a fraction are multiplied by the same number, the resultant fraction is equivalent to the original fraction. The resultant fraction is raised to a higher number when both terms of the fraction are multiplied by the same number. For example, 1/2 can be raised to 2/4 by multiplying 2 over 2. 1/2 becomes 3/6 when multiplied by 3 over 3. 1/2 becomes 4/8 when multiplied by 4 over 4. Since we are multiplying by a number over the same number, the result is 1. 2 over 2 equals 1. 3 over 3 equals 1. 4 over 4 equals 1, and so forth. Multiplying a number or a fraction by 1 does not change the value. In summary, 1/2 times 2 over 2 is 2/4. Therefore, 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4. 1/2 times 3 over 3 is 3/6. Therefore, 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6 and to 2/4. Reducing a fraction is the opposite of raising a fraction. If both the numerator and the denominator of a fraction are divided by the same number, the fraction is reduced. 6/12 can be reduced to 3/6 if divided by 2 over 2, to 2/4 if divided by 3 over 3, and to 1/2 if divided by 6 over 6. If 6/12 is divided by 5, the complex fraction 1 1/5 over 2 2/5 results. It is generally practiced that a fraction, when being reduced, is reduced to whole numbers in both the numerator and denominator rather than to a complex fraction. This simplifies the fraction. Generally, it is desirable to reduce a fraction to lowest terms. Reducing to the lowest terms means that the fraction has been divided in both the numerator and denominator by the highest number that can be evenly divided into both. 6/12 divided by 2 over 2 is reduced to 3/6, but this is not the lowest term of the fraction. 3/6 can be further reduced by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 3. 1/2 results, which is the lowest term of the fraction. Thus, 6/12 can be reduced to lowest terms by dividing the numerator and the denominator by a number which results in the fraction 1/2. To reduce 6/12 to lowest terms, divide 6 into 6 and 6 into 12. 1/2 results. If both the numerator and the denominator of a fraction are divided by the same number, the fraction is reduced. The original fraction is equivalent to the reduced fraction. However, the fraction is reduced to lowest terms only if the largest number which can be divided evenly into both numerator and denominator is selected and used as the divisor to reduce the fraction. For example, 16/32 is divided by 4/4. The fraction is reduced to 4/8. 4/8 is equivalent to 16/32, but 4/8 is not the lowest term of the fraction. If 16/32 is divided by 16/16, the fraction is reduced to 1/2. 1/2 is the lowest term of the fraction 16/32. 1/2, 4/16, and 16/32 are called equivalent fractions. Step 1. To change a mixed number to a fraction, multiply the denominator of the fraction by the whole number. Step 2. Add the amount of the numerator to the product obtained in Step 1. Step 3. Place this sum over the fraction bar and retain the original denominator for the denominator of the new fraction. For example, to change 3 1/2 to a fraction, multiply the whole number 3 by the denominator 2. 6 results as the product. Add the numerator 1 to the product 6. 1 plus 6 equals 7. Place the 7 over the fraction bar of the new fraction. Keep the denominator of the original fraction 2 and place it under the fraction bar. You will get 7/2, or 7 over 2. 7 over 2 is equivalent to 3 1/2 because 7 divided by 2 equals 3 1/2. To simplify a compound fraction, multiply the first numerator by the second numerator and place the result over a fraction bar. Next, multiply the first denominator by the second denominator and place the result under the fraction bar. Now, reduce the fraction to its lowest terms. For example, to simplify the compound fraction 1/2 of 1/2, multiply the first numerator by 1 and the second numerator by 1. The product 1 becomes the numerator of the simplified fraction. Next, multiply the denominators. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 is the denominator of the simplified fraction. Since the new fraction 1/4 cannot be reduced further, 1/4 is equivalent to 1/2 of 1/2. To simplify the compound fraction 2/3 of 3/4, multiply the first numerator 2 by the second numerator 3. The product 6 becomes the numerator of the simplified fraction. Next, multiply the first denominator 3 by the second denominator 4. 12 results and becomes the denominator of the simplified fraction 6/12. 6/12 can be further reduced to its lowest term of 1/2. Thus, 2/3 of 3/4 is equivalent to 1/2. Complex fractions can be simplified by both methods of division and multiplication. To simplify a complex fraction by division, first simplify the numerator. For the fraction 3 7/8 over 12, the numerator becomes 3 times 8, or 24, plus 7, or 31 over 8. The fraction becomes 31/8 over 12. To divide 12 into 31/8, place 12 over 1. Invert the 1 over 12 and multiply. The fraction is 31 over 96. To simplify by multiplication, multiply both the numerator and denominator by a whole number that does not change the value of the fraction. For example, to simplify 2 1/2 over 3 3/4, multiply both terms of the fraction by 4. 2 times 4 equals 8. 1/2 times 4 over 1 equals 2. And 8 plus 2 equals 10. 10 becomes the numerator. Next, multiply 3 times 4. 12 results. Multiply 3/4 by 4 over 1 and 3 results. 12 plus 3 equals 15, the denominator. Reduce 10/15 to lowest terms. The fraction becomes 2/3. Therefore, the complex fraction 2 1/2 over 3 3/4 is equivalent to 2/3.